Hello and welcome to episode 60 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me, as always, is Neil.
Hello, Greg.
Hello, Neil. And, we're here again today to talk about various heresy things. It's going to be, again, a little bit lighter. Neil's been up painting his Perturabo quite a lot. I've been fairly busy. We've got the Weekender coming up. And, yeah, things have been a bit manic. Just kind of stuff going on. So it might be a little bit of a lighter show in terms of getting into the heresy. We're going to be talking to a guy called Rob, who's getting into the heresy, hasn't even played a game yet, and we're going to kind of try and get him on every couple of months or something to see how he's progressing as an example of someone getting into the heresy. And we're also going to have Michael on to talk about books as usual. But we will kick off with our sponsors. I'll take Lil Legend Studios. So congratulations for Miles. He's now, don't know if you remember if we said this on the last episode, he's become an official part of the Age of Darkness podcast, where he's got a little painting segment, painting and modelling and hobby segment, which is quite cool. So we will, I'm sure we will get him on here again anyway, but he's on that one, and he's still doing his thing. He's painting models and teaching people and showing the world how to use a brush.
And an airbrush.
And an airbrush and whatever other techniques probably that you need. Not gaming. Don't go to him to learn gaming. Your money might not be best spent. But if you want to learn how to blend or paint faces or object source lighting or just using an airbrush, just the basics, then you can always chat Miles up and he can teach you over the interwebs. At your convenience, which is pretty cool.
Right, yeah, and I'll take Element Games. So Element Games, your one-stop shop for anything you need hobby-related. Could be dice, the latest releases, and get extra money off those on the pre-release week.
Yep.
Could be paints. Could be absolutely anything, really. And I think you said earlier, didn't you, Greg, that you'd recently bought some bits and pieces from Element?
Oh, yeah, adding to the Stormcast and the... I bought the guy from the Magos from the Triumvirate, Cruel. Can't remember his name now. Anyway, yeah, him. And it looks like we're getting a few more bits and pieces coming with this 13th Black Crusade, which, just for interest, has been confirmed as not the end times by GW on their Facebook page. Not the end times, but the chance to blow a few planets up and kill a few people, I think. It's basically what it is. But loads of cool stuff coming out there, and you never know with certain things that have happened in the story. Maybe seeing some new styles of units for older miniatures, maybe like the Cadian miniatures being updated, something like that. So if you are looking for some militia units, you might want to keep an eye. I don't know if they're coming, but I wouldn't be surprised because they're quite old kits. But yeah. If you keep an eye on Element, they'll have it all, as you say, around 20% on pre-order weekend. We've got another flipping Silver Tower Warhammer Quest box game coming out.
Yeah, I saw that. That
well.
Caused a lot of... I saw even GW employees going, oh, there goes all my money again.
Yep, it's just a cracking little game, loads of miniatures. Really cool, really cool. And I've seen so many people buying up the Zinch stuff as well. Which is, I think it's cool. I think pretty much everything they're putting out at the moment is a real struggle. They're pulling me back into 40k as well. It's like, no.
I must admit, I was quite tempted when I was looking. I'll tell you what did it, and you know the Warhammer TV?
Yeah.
I'd watched my first few bits of that this week, and I was at work, and I think it was Thursday, because I signed up to Twitch. And then I got a notification saying, oh, Warhammer TV's online. And I had a look at the schedule, and I thought, oh, this is quite good, Duncan's talking about dry brushing, and they're talking about... so I had it on, and I just sort of had it on my phone while I was on front of my computer working away, had some earphones in, and Eddie and Rob were talking about the second book in the series, and I've forgotten the name of it. It's the Fracturing of Beltan.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they were just going into real detail, and I found it actually really absorbing and really sort of entertaining, because you were really getting a good idea of what was in the book and some of the stories, and you start sitting there thinking, I could do an Elder Army. I could buy some of those units, and it's amazing how easy it is to get drawn back in.
As a painter, do those models take on a slightly different? Like, do you look at them slightly differently?
Yeah, well, I think because they've mentioned about new colour schemes, which I thought, okay, that's cool. Also, I love Elder models. I've never really painted that many of them, but I do love because I do like flat armour plates. Yeah. And they're covered in them. So, I do really, really like the Elder. So, yeah, and it was just then talking about it and getting all excited and talking about this and that. And I thought I must admit, I thought the Warhammer TV was really, really good.
Yeah, cool. And I wasn't specifically talking about Eldar, but, the release we've seen, we've seen with Age of Sigmar now, we were talking about this just before we recorded, the first images of the Vanguard chamber for the Stormcast have all except one photo have been released by GW. There is one photo of some of the weird kind of half bird, half horsey type creatures, but the rest of them have been photos put through on Warhammer Community. So we've talked before about those blurry images. Maybe we don't like them. We're getting a better feel for those models now. But as a gamer, I'm looking at, cool, new units. Do you sit there and think, that? Do you sit there evaluating them for competition painting? Is what basically what I'm trying to say. Yes,
yeah, pretty much. I'm looking at it. Does it really get me excited? I'm also always looking for conversion opportunities.
Sure, yeah.
So you see something, you think, could I convert that? Could I use that in something? Because so much really cool stuff can come over the crossover between 40k, 30k, and even like Age of Sigmar. You think, could I use that? Could I use that that armor and convert it into being a space marine, or could I, all these sort of things? And yeah, I mean, new models always get you thinking.
All right, cool, yeah. So, yeah, it's something I don't tend to think. I don't have that joy of painting, so it's not something I look at quite so much. In fact, sometimes it's a fear of painting when you see certain models, like talking about those Eldar, the one who's got the horn coming out of his head.
Yes.
Which is a brilliant concept, actually. And that little bit of explanation you talked about Rob and Eddie having, kind of actually, for all those people who were like, he looks Slaneshi, it kind of explains it really well, really simply.
Yeah.
But the swirly stuff around that, I mean, I've got to paint that Celestin Prime, but that's got a lot more like details to break it up. But that swirly stuff is very kind of one-dimensional. It's the same all the way around.
It looks incredibly difficult to paint, and Aidan Daly was on Twitter, I think, and he put up there, hardest model he's ever had to paint.
Oh, he did? I missed that. All right.
And so that makes you think, doesn't it? If, high-end painter says, hardest model to paint ever, you might have to start weighing it up, whether you sort of...
Yeah.
Although, saying that, I'm sure Duncan's going to release a how-to video on getting that done, and then once he breaks it all down, everyone will be doing it.
Yeah, but because it is so flat, I suppose there is a lot you could do with it. But yeah, it's one of those things. But as I say, as a journeyman painter, it's like, that'll all be pretty much one colour. But yeah, all part of the fun. So yes, GW doing great stuff, and you can get all your GW stuff through Element as well, which is always awesome. Cool. So, Neil, the progress is going. We're recording this basically a week before the Weekender.
Correct.
And what time are you staying up till tonight?
2:00 in the morning.
And that's going to be every night, is it?
It was every night for the last 2 weeks, so yeah, that's not going to change.
Perturabo. We saw the video go up. How long have you got that broken down into what models you're working on?
Yep, so it was basically working out that obviously Perturabo is very nearly done, and I'm finishing off painting his base at the moment. So he will be done hopefully tonight, maybe tomorrow. Leviathan Dreadnought finish this weekend, so Sunday, and then make the base for the Magos, and then get the rest of him painted throughout next week. So it's all been planned out, and I've just got to make sure I hit the hours now and just really get good sessions in every night.
All good fun. And we've heard that Max and Anya. That's right,
yes,
isn't it?
Judges, yep.
Judging the painting. As you say, Aidan joined Twitter, so I followed him up. And with Duncan, and I found a few more staff as well. Chris Peach, who's been he's been doing the narrative Age of Sigmar games on Warhammer TV, their first little campaign, which have been brilliant fun. Showing what you can really do with narrative when you actually approach the game without needing to win, and to see how a story can progress, was really good. But he's just a beast for painting models quickly, painting armies quickly. So actually it's been quite interesting listening to him talk about a very different style of painting. To do all people's skin just with white and washes, or white and one wash. It's kind of gone away from a lot of the way that a lot of people would choose to paint
Super
Heresy.
speedy.
Yeah, but effective, like not being top end, but not losing too much quality in doing so.
Yes.
Which is really cool. So all those guys on that, which is cool. Yep, excellent. And so for all those people, obviously we'll get good photos of them as well. And anyone at the weekend will see them in the cabinets, and hopefully up on Warhammer Community as well at some point.
Yes.
Yeah, we shall see.
I've been trying to be a bit more prevalent in putting up pictures of, my work as I'm going through, because you do get caught in a rut, and hopefully when we announce the competition, I can make sure I do plenty of pictures and plenty of progress shots.
Yeah, I think we'll have to keep you honest on that one.
Yes.
But there is something good actually about putting those pictures up and having people comment, or just having that acknowledgement. And I know your likes on Instagram are going to be way more than mine. But just kind of be able, but even just for yourself to be able to go, right, I've done this part of that model. Here's a photo.
Yes.
In my case, it's more, I've finished this model. Here's a photo. Brilliant. Done. Kind of puts a full stop on it. Move on. But again, for me, the big thing, this 365 challenge has been really good in making me sit and paint. And someone was asking me kind of like, how many models? It's like, well, it doesn't really matter. It's not about the models. It's about sitting down and putting the time in. Because then the models come out of that. But I don't, as we said before, I don't stress. I don't think, I've painted this model forever. Because if I do start to think like that, I'll go, right, I'll put him aside. And I'll paint this model, and I'll come back to it. And decided that at work, painting at work I can do, but it's a little bit of a palaver taking everything in. But I can build models at work. So I've been building all the plastic at work and started to take some of the resin stuff in. I had to buy myself another little sort of mini hobby set just to take to work. Make sure I got
travel set.
Yeah, make sure I got files. I really underappreciated good files.
Oh, really?
It was from watching the conversion videos that Duncan did, actually, for Blood Bowl. They've been doing these how to convert your own Blood Bowl teams.
I saw one of those, yeah.
And they've been doing little bits on just general conversions as well. And it was like, and always file off the plastic. And I've always got used to, particularly with plastic, using a knife and doing it that way. But actually, the file, I've suddenly realised actually is a better option. It's a safer option for damaging the model.
That's true.
You don't, it's particularly when you're working with resin as well. And actually it cleans up resin a bit better than that old knife scraping technique as well. But I was so used to doing it.
I must admit, I've always done it that way. Because I've just been indoctrinated. You sort of get caught into that's the way I do it every time. Yes. Don't change the system.
I literally went on Amazon and spent like £3 on 10 files. And I was just like, loads of different file shapes, getting those awkward bits where sometimes your knife can't get in as well. So, doing that at work is very viable. So I've been putting me hours in there, doing a bit of painting. Finally got onto some of my 30k and put a photo up tonight of one of my finished characters. But I'm looking at some of the other stuff I don't want to paint now, thinking, right, get these 3 characters done, and I'll at least start on them until I've had enough. And then I can just move along. and go from there and see what else we pick up at the Weekender. Hopefully not too much.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Buying new stuff that you want to get stuck into.
Yeah. And being very thankful of the fact that I have a whatchamacallit? Oh my word, an Evernote set of folders set up just for all my paint schemes.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and it's literally a case of, okay, how do I do the armour on this one? Okay, it's this colour, then this colour, then this colour, and I edge highlight it with this colour. Awesome. I know what I'm doing. Because the amount of times you look at a colour and think, especially if you mix as well, writing down...
mixing is the... is the one.
Write down your mixes. Because it's so easy to forget. Or to literally have a break from painting that armour. You come back in 3 months. And it's like, oh yeah, I did the skin slightly differently on this one, didn't I? Because I was trying something. How did we do it?
Can't remember.
Can't remember, When I did my 40k Space Wars, I was following Duncan's video, so I could always go back to the YouTube video and find out. But yeah.
And sometimes technique has a big thing to play as well, because I've done it before with knowing what the colours I've used, but just applied the technique slightly changed a while later, and then going, the colours look completely different because I'm transitioning in different places and, using a darker, mixing in more black to try and darken it. And yeah, so sometimes you have to have a good idea of ratios and the technique that you've used as well. I mean, I know that probably for some painters that might be just, I applied it with a brush, but...
Yeah, but even then, I think most people do... I've got 2 or 3 ways of doing, probably got 2 ways of doing cloth in terms of parchments. So on the Storm class, there's a lot of these trails of parchment. So I've got a couple of ways of doing that, and you do have to remember because they do look completely different once you finish them. And you're like, oh yeah, I did that the other way. And I find that I tend to paint skin a little bit differently. On occasion, that tends to be one where I'm like, because I think it's because of my level of painting, I'm not trying to get it completely accurate. I'm not concentrating on the face, I'm picking out details and things like that. But I have had 2 or 3 different ways of painting skin. But yeah, you're right. And if you are the kind of person who does try and change things, it's making sure that you write down this is an edge, this is a dry brush of this is a wash of, if you wash a paint down rather than using a set wash, or this is if you're doing wet blending on something, it's gonna be a slightly different effect than doing a normal kind of, in quotation marks, normal blending.
Yeah, normal blending. Yeah.
Yeah, poor man's blending. As they say, so things like that. Yeah, you're definitely right. But it's all part of the fun, isn't it?
It is. I mean, that's what makes it. That's what I enjoy out of painting, is trying to come up with new recipes and refining techniques and all that sort of jazz.
The one thing about my Space Wolves is I have edge highlight, every edge, because I've done that, because they're the black and grey. I've got a pallid witch flesh highlight.
I like pallid witch flesh. I use that all the time.
Yeah, mine's a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit of a dry paint anyway.
Yeah, it clogs up very quickly.
Yeah, and mine's a little bit old, so I think even though I haven't used much of it, I almost think I might need to go and get another bottle.
Yeah, I've been buying loads of replacements lately because where I've been doing longer sessions and leaving paints open for longer periods, obviously they've been drying out really quick.
Sure, yeah.
And trying to refine things. So, I find ceramite white I need to replace.
Yeah.
Virtually every 2 weeks. Because it just dries up so quickly. Do you have any agitators in bottles? I don't. I was thinking about getting some, but I never got round to getting any. I mean, yeah. So the principle of this is, for listeners who may not know, is when you're shaking the paint, the idea is to mix it up. When it starts to clog, they become separate. It becomes harder to mix up. You put in a ball of some kind in there, and it can knock into the paint and help break it up. One thing you've got to be careful with is getting the kind of metals which will affect the paint. I've actually got plastic. I
don't even know what they are really. They're like BB shots, but quite large. And even they do a certain job. I've even resurrected some really old paints with them, just about.
Oh, really?
But for a kind of it's just starting to turn, it just helps a little bit. Yeah, you put a couple of them. They're so cheap off Amazon again. You buy like 100 of them for £1 or whatever, and chuck a couple in the bottle, and you hear them rattling. It's like having a spray can, isn't it? It's hearing the rattle. And then they're hitting around the bottle and they're helping mix that paint. And it might just like make them last, twice as long for you, which could be helpful, couldn't it? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, because I think I've had to bin loads of paints recently that have got a fair bit in them, but they're just too cloggy to use. And
do you, you haven't thought then, because one common problem that people say with GW's paint pots are the lids.
Oh, the lids are the absolute worst.
Yeah. So
I was even as we sat here talking, I was trying to get some. I was trying to mix two colours. I had both lids, two pots open. One just kept falling shut, and I thought, could we give a shout out to GW to improve their paint pots?
I don't think they ever will. Yeah. The ability to stop paint getting in around that lip is amazing if you can do it. The amount of times I've had to go through and just clean out paint to help shut the lids and everything else. So you haven't thought about maybe decanting your paints into dropper bottles or different paints?
I was looking at something on the web recently that someone had put up something about decanting them, and I just think with the amount of paints I own, it will be an absolute nightmare.
You could do a few at a time,
I just think it'd be a lot of work, a lot of thought, and just buy new paint. It's easier.
Fair enough. Lazy man's method.
Yes, completely.
I mean, you've got to judge that, but you can.
I could spend an hour doing that, or I could spend an hour painting.
But that hour you spend doing that might save you 5 minutes every paint session.
One thing I did think of was the dropper bottles might be really useful
for mixing.
For mixing, because you can get that like one dot of that, one dot of that, one dot of that, right, bang, like that's mixed, rather than always trying to have that accuracy with different size brushes.
Yeah. So the Vallejo size dropper bottles for all their paint, I think you can pick up like 150 of them for like a tenner on Amazon or wherever. I think you can do that, and then if it's a case of literally when you get your new paint, just pour it in.
Yeah.
Right, you don't have to do them all at once, do you?
No, just be like, right,
I've got to wait. The seal's tighter. You're not opening and breaking that seal when you're, as often, because once you pop the nozzle in theory that nozzle stays in there. And you can just drop out as much paint as you need then, so you're not drying up loads more.
You probably waste a lot less with over putting too much on a palette as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm very frugal when I get paint out of a pot. It's like micro dots coming out on a brush, but occasionally I get a big lump of paint and then put it on, and then it dries up, and you think, well, that was a waste of paint. That's probably like 5 times as much as I needed to paint.
Yeah, the only problem for me with that is I keep all my GW paints in a GW case with KR foam in them. So I got however many 160 paint pots in there I can fit. And they're easily identifiable. I've got them in bases and blah, 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 blah. So unless you could put paint on top of the handle, I suppose, just depends how you're storing your paints. It might not be quite as easy to find the ones you want. Yeah. But, I suppose generally if other people are storing theirs in a cupboard, in a drawer or whatever, it's not as easy as it is for me anyway. So, you've got to have a system somehow, haven't you? Deciding that. But, yeah, cool. So maybe dropper balls.
Maybe, yes.
We'll have to see. Excellent. Before we move on and do the news, there were a couple of things. First off, the Nova Open Charitable Foundation. I did Facebook this and tweet this. They every year they run for the Nova Open. They do a load of charity stuff. They have eBay auctions for armies, which are painted for them and go for a decent money and things like that. But they do a few draws. So there's 1,000 tickets limited for your chance to win a painted copy of Prospero, Burning of Prospero. So this is painted for, bear with me a second, I will get to the right one. It's been painted by, I think it's about 8 different very reputable painters, and there's Slayer Sword winners and lots of Golden Demon winners in there as well. It's the whole kit. KR are throwing in backpack or boxes, should I say, to transport it, and you don't have to be at the event to win it either. And it's 95 cents of every dollar that goes that pays is paid goes to the charity, which is Doctors Without Borders. So yeah, it's the whole of that. We got names are Damon Drescher, Rich Erickson, Jeff Jenkins, Celso Mendez Jr., David Powells, Brian Sobb, Dave Taylor, Chris Bora. So 4 Slayer Swords, 70 Golden Demon Awards, and 15 Crystal Brush Awards between them.
I hadn't actually heard of any of them, so I'm assuming a lot of it is mainly American painters.
Dave Taylor is Dave Paints, I believe.
Oh, right.
Dave Taylor Miniatures, that's right. Sorry, I'm thinking of the other guy. Yeah, I've heard of Dave Taylor from various things, and I might have heard of one of the others. But, yeah, so $5 a ticket. As I said, they're limited to 1,000 tickets. It's not bad, is it, really?
No, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting way of doing it, because if you limited tickets, then one, you'd hope you know how much money you're going to raise, but two, you know what your odds are for entering, so...
Yeah, absolutely. It's, it's quite cool. It's really quite cool. And they do, as I say, they do a lot of charity stuff every year as well. So when you're... a lot of people will know already about the Nova Open and stuff, but they support, I think they've done breast cancer research, Doctors Without Borders, and they got the Fisher House Foundation, which is, if I remember, is that? Yeah, supporting families of military. And every year they raise money, and I always thought it was more about the eBay auctions, so it wasn't really interesting to me because I'm never going to win them. But this is quite cool. Say for $5, it's not a lot of money for a ticket.
No, so, definitely not.
Go and crack on over there, and of course we've got our own going on at the moment. And we've had some rather sizable donations, so thank you very much. And some people have put in the odd quid. Thank you very much as well.
Yeah, every bit helps.
It's all welcome. And once again, for those who don't know, maybe the first prize is a character series model or equivalent. So if it's got to be about the same size, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
we can't go too big.
Obviously, as this is a Heresy podcast, most people want a character series model, but just in case someone only likes Age of Sigmar,
or they like both. There might just be the case of there's a model they want painted. So yeah, something of a reasonable size from any other a character series model equivalent, as we say. And Neil will paint it up with your kind of specifications and to based to match, and hopefully we're going to enter it into a Golden Demon.
Yes,
and then send
indeed.
it out, which is a pretty awesome prize.
I'll tell you what was that made me gave me some fear actually. So I promoted this as much as I could on Instagram after we announced it, and pushed out, because obviously a lot of great painters on Instagram, lots of followers. So I thought, great way of getting the word out. And then I had lots of Slayer Sword winners saying that they've donated, and I thought, if a Slayer Sword winner wins it, that's going to be really awkward.
I have had one person who I think they won their own awards, has said that they're just donating to the charity, and if they win the prize, then we'll get redrawn, which is cool. Which is it's great. At the end of the day, we're raising money for charity, but it's also a cool prize, and we're doing the second prize of the limited edition summoning model as well.
So 2 chances to win.
Yeah, indeed, and that one will just be the limited editions summoning model, because we're not buying too much, unfortunately, because all of that money that we raise is going to Evelina. It's all being added up with the first raffle we did, with the show's giving 10% of its sponsorship, its Patreon, and things like that as well. It's going over to it, and I'm collecting that all together, and then after May we'll hand a check over to Evelina for the whole lot. So. It's all good. It's nice to see it going up, and there's some healthy sales on that, which is cool. But there's at the end of the day, you buy one ticket, you got a chance of winning.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
And as Joe down the club said, that's a really cool prize. If you pay 20 quid and manage to win that, it's like yeah, it is. So he's got his eye on you painting the Ball Central for the character series Ball Central if he wins. So,
if that's what he wants.
Exactly. And on that note, a massive thank you to Isleworth Gaming Club. So they contacted me, said they were promoting a charity raffle, and could they have a shout out? Of course they can. If you have got a club or an event or whatever and you do want to shout out, don't forget you can do that. So this is Isleworth Gaming Club. They're about a mile from Twickenham, and they meet every Monday night. And you can find them on Facebook as Isleworth Gaming Club, or on Twitter as @Isleworth Gaming Club. And I'll put those in the show notes as well. So massive thank you to those guys. And if you're over West London, then maybe pop down there on a Monday night.
Definitely.
Yeah, I know some people that's not too far from. So cool stuff. Groovy. Right, we've waffled on quite a lot for the opening, but that's fine. That's fine. We'll have a little break, come back, and we'll talk news. And we're going to bring you some news, which is mainly models you've already seen before. It's once again because of the open days, we're getting all the models that we saw at the open days.
Yes,
it's becoming,
we are,
and
a bit of a cycle, with the Heresy Weekender coming up, you're probably thinking that they're not going to do amazing.
No, they're not going to release.
You've never seen this before. When they could show it off at the Weekender.
Yeah, and they might do that. Like this model's going to be available there in limited numbers pre-show, but yeah, they're not going to release a big release a week or two before the weekend. That's not going to happen. So what we got? We got the Legio Custodes Palace Grav tank. I love these tanks. These are the things at the moment that I'm like, yep, can't go and buy any of them. Must.
What? Because is that the distraction that will just tip you over the edge?
Yeah. Well, I've got all those Custodes ready to kind of start, and I'm like, how big's an army of Custodes going to be? Which is why there's a concern that they're going to be the Grey Knights of 30k, when Grey Knights were the be-all and end-all of 40k. I mean, that was down to their rules as much as the fact that it was a small army. But
yes,
the fact that any elite army becomes so easy to collect, particularly when you're looking at, Custodes they're not going to be cheap, are they? Any of this stuff. So,
but then you've got the plastics.
Yeah,
for the bulk of the army as well.
Exactly,
so
that's what I mean.
Counterbalances it.
You don't need many. No, they're not going to be cheap points.
Oh, points.
So your plastic troops are also going to be expensive point-wise.
Yes.
Yeah, so that all leads into buying a few awesome-looking tanks. And the fact is, they a bit like Mechanicum, and why Mechanicum's so popular is they're different. These Grav tanks look phenomenal. Some people, like, the engines look a little bit like the pod racers from Episode 1, Star Wars, which is,
they do.
I love. I think they're awesome. They look amazing. But, you don't get other models like that. And even their Custodes are different. Their Contemptors are different.
Yeah.
Because sword and board guy or the spear guy with a flipping las cannon on the end of his spear. But, the Contemptor with his sword and shield is out as well. I've seen a few people say they're not that interested, which is cool, such is life. But the vast majority of people really do dig the Custodes aesthetic.
Yeah, I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, and as we go on and get more and more stuff, you can only assume they're going to do Terminators and they're going to do jet bikes because they're in the images. The cover Inferno that was released, seemingly having bolter-armed Custodes in the bottom corner as well. So kind of actually from a fairly limited kind of army, a nice spread of units and whatever. It's never going to be an expansive kind of listing, but loads of cool stuff to be getting on with.
Yeah, and if I'd imagine, I don't, have you painted much gold?
No.
I would have thought it was one of those colours that actually wouldn't be too bad to knock an army out in, because if you get you can get the gold spray,
Retributor
some
spray.
Washes, I think you could actually knock an army out pretty quick.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say as well. So you can Retributor spray it, you can get, a nice gold airbrush colour, and then you've probably got a number of different ways of doing the gold, and that's the huge bulk of your army painted. Very simply. Look at that. If you look at the Contemptor, 90% of the model's gold.
Yeah.
Even the way the Forge World painted it, it's got some different shades of gold, and then some red and black as a nice dark. And as we've said many times, gold, red, and black works so well.
Oh yeah,
it's it's used a lot because it works so well. So yeah, Custodes, we're going to see them everywhere, and I don't think it's quite the same because, say, in 40k when that Drago Star was about, or whatever it was called, it was top of the tournaments because it was the top army, and therefore that heightened everyone's kind of appeal of it, or everyone's kind of knowledge of it, was because there were 6 out of 10 at the top of this tournament were, Grey Knights. We don't quite have the same setup in Heresy. So yeah, we're going to see them a lot, but I don't think it's going to be. It's less easy to dominate anyway, even if they were good. Plus, I don't think they'll necessarily be as good. I think they'll have a lot of answers to them actually.
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking because I used to run a very elite Iron Hands list.
Yeah.
With Ferrous and Terminators, and then Dreadnoughts and tanks. It was I didn't have a lot of troops on the board. I had a lot of elite guys, and I always found it very hard at the tournaments and things to win games because the troop choices are so vitally important for so many of the Heresy scenarios that actually, if you've got 2, maybe 3 units of Terminators, and you've got a real sort of point scoring, you've got to try and capture ground, you're going to struggle with those guys.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and they're usually in expensive tanks as well, which can be blown up in one turn. They can happen. I wonder if it does change the way that, again, every new army has an effect on the people who play against it. My first thought is actually, with all the invulnerable saves, with all the kind of the protection in combat you can get, all the lethality in combat that you can get from the Custodes, guys with bolt guns just rolling lots of dice are going to bring them down. Yeah. They're almost going to be as effective as a las cannon, except you're going to get a lot more for your, a lot more bodies holding bolt guns. So
I think your 20-man tactical squad with bolters, like Fury of the Legion, that could kill a lot of Custodes.
Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't, you're in trouble. But
yeah,
but they're coming in with 2-up armor saves, with up to flipping 4-up invulnerables or whatever, and re-rolling in combat. Sometimes, you end up paying for las cannons on tanks and whatever, and they don't do a lot. Not to say that we're going to go all that way, but it might actually strengthen that infantry style list.
Yeah.
Which actually would be a good thing if it did happen, and that's speculation on my part. I'm not too sure if people will change their armies. There seems to be. I still don't think people have really changed their armies much to deal with Mechanicum, and we have a lot of Mechanicum out there. So, maybe they should do, maybe they shouldn't do. At the end of the day, if you're playing with what you want to play with, I do still think if you're gonna struggle against an army, it's worth thinking about that, even in your friendly environment, just to make sure you're always in with a chance of winning the game,
Yeah.
or at least competing in the game. It's not about having an army that will beat everyone. It's having an army that can have fun against everyone.
Oh yeah, completely.
Yeah, and sometimes we build these not the cookie cutter lists, but these rock paper scissors lists. I've done it in many games. It used to happen in Necromunda with Spires all the time. So Spires were the ultra elite gang in Necromunda, and I either found that I was ruining my opponent having loads of fun, and he wasn't, or he was, I was failing saves and having no fun, and he was having loads of fun. It always ended up that one of us wasn't really enjoying the game that much. So I stopped playing them in the end. Because it's, that's not what I want. So, yeah.
It's got to be fun.
You would hope so. Wordbearer dice. We got
Yes.
them out. Yeah, all the dice issues that have been going on. Let's hope the Forge World kind of managed to get all that sorted because I've seen people scrabbling over dice. On trading sites, someone's put up, I've got some Iron Warriors dice, and there's someone coming in first going, yep, I'll have them. Kind of, where are you? How much do I have to pay for them? And then 6 other people going, no, I want them. No, I want them. And it's like, quite popular. So hopefully they get that sorted and get loads of stock in. And then the Wolfkin, Russ's Wolves.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you still like them?
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those ones, see them on the table. Yeah, again, it's not that they're bad. It's maybe that I expected something slightly different. I think it's maybe one more than the other one, the one that's leaping up rather than hunkering over.
Right.
I don't know. It almost looks... try and kind of work it out how to say. It almost looks a bit toyish rather than modelish to me.
Okay.
That's the best way of me describing it. But... that's being really nitpicky. I still like the model. But, yeah, I don't know. It's just got a different feel about it. But it's cool. Some really interesting comments I've seen around the onlines, basically saying that Lehman Russ is a £140 set because you're going to get the Wolves. It's like, well, he's not. Basically saying that they're increasing the price of Primarchs. It's like, well, no, he's a £70 Primarch, and if you wanted his 2 Wolves, it's £70. It's like you can take Zardu Layak, and you can take Zardu Layak and the Blade Slaves. You don't have to take both.
Can we just quickly clarify? If you win the raffle, it's Lehman Russ or the Wolves.
It's a character series model.
Yeah.
So technically, it's one of the Wolves. No.
Yes. Yeah.
No, yeah. So yeah, they are. That's that £100, £40 set is a bundle. That's all it is. But and you can see now why Forge World didn't want to release it as a single set.
Cool. Yeah. Can you imagine if they put a set out like that? People would have been absolutely going mad.
They would be furious.
Also, like we said, it gives people options. If someone likes the Wolves and they want to use them in something else, they can buy just the Wolves. So
yeah. But hey ho, and that's all the Forge World stuff we had out. Got some Blood Bowl stuff coming. We've got some more Blood Bowl stuff coming from GW at the weekend as well. Did you see that Forge World have put out a load more adverts for staff?
Yes, they have. Yeah.
So it's digital designers, plastic designers, and some other bits as well. So we've got. Obviously now they've got Blood Bowl, and Blood Bowl's something they need to keep producing models for constantly, and they'll need to do Season 2 as well at some point, and they'll need to do, they'll need to keep that going, not to lose momentum. Adeptus Titanicus is getting closer, and they'll soon have those 2 lines out. They're working on the 3rd game, allegedly a Necromunda style game, maybe with Space Marines. Don't really know. That's all second-hand knowledge or third-hand knowledge. So I'm not, I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. But once that game's kind of done, they're going to be working on the next one pretty soon. So we're starting to see specialist games really expand. And there's going to be a lot of work going on there, which is cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can maintain, staff. I know that, I think, because has Israel moved on?
I don't know.
Because I heard somewhere that he'd moved on and that had put the Primarchs kind of back a little bit because it's still Simon by himself.
Plugging away.
You know, it's never easy. Kind of, you never know. You know, staff jobs that come up for people, and they're going to go if the job's, you know, what they want to do, or they want to go somewhere else, or what have you. So, yeah, loads of jobs going up there, and editorial for Black Library as well. If you think you can be an editor, I think they're looking for like editors for each of their lines. It's like, oh, it's the job I want, and it's the job I can't actually do. So frustrating.
Well, they also put up a job for a heavy metal painter as well, haven't they, recently? Yeah,
well, and we discussed last episode, like, what you have to do to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So, not only is it painting to that level, it's painting to that level within a time frame.
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, for almost all of these jobs, you have to live in Nottingham, or you have to work in Nottingham. So, you know, you can apply from America, but be aware that you won't be able to send your work over. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's always, you know, it's being in Nottingham for me would have always stopped me from being a painter, a professional painter.
It does make me laugh when there's people like, could I do this job from America? And it's no. Like, there aren't that many jobs you can phone across and do, you know, but bless, yeah, hey ho. Yeah, if I had any talent, I'd be going for some of those, but I don't, so.
Which it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's really gutting because Andy Hoare was putting up some photos of an Inquisimunda or Inquisi 28 or whatever game that he was DMing at Warhammer World with some of his mates. So they were playing in a game and he was DMing the game for them. And I'm like, oh, it's really tempting me to maybe think about moving up to Nottingham. It's like, that'd be so cool, just having Warhammer World there. Like, oh, what night's gaming night? Oh, any night. Just go up there and, oh, look, there's loads of people around here who play and who are really invested in the, you know, the background and the setting. And they're playing, oh, look, they're playing Inquisimunda. Brilliant, you know.
Get involved.
Yes, yeah. It's so frustrating. But, you know, it's a bit up north for us down here.
Yeah. We get nosebleed when we go up that far.
Exactly, and I live about an hour's drive south of you, so, you know.
Yeah, I know.
It's crazy, crazy world. So that's that. We're right on the edge of the weekend. We probably have the schedule out by the time this is released. We're going to do our traditional Weekender episode afterwards. Try and talk to as many people there as we can, get people's impressions, give you a rundown of what's going on, what we think's good, what we think's bad, all that stuff. There's no point us talking too much about that schedule now because it'll be out there and, you know, almost by the time this airs, people listening to it, like, they'll be listening to all the feedback. We do have the Friday opening, which is going to be...
That was great.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see exactly how that works. Get the feeling that, you know, at the end of the day, Forge would have to hire the venue for the day before to set up, I'm sure. You know, they're not going to be allowed to book it all out for free. So if you've got the venue and you're paying for it, make the most of it. Sounds like a good plan. How that works out in terms of organisation and stuff, obviously we're not there. But not getting too hooked up about it. We'll go, we'll find out, and we'll feed back. And in fact, you know, I've already talked to, you know, a couple of people and suggested a couple of things, whether it's too late, whether they've got their own ideas, whether they think my ideas are rubbish or not. Who knows? But it's going to be enjoyable. If you are listening to this on your way up, come and say hello to Neil and myself. We should have identifying T-shirts on. Fingers crossed. Not quite here yet, but they'll be with me in the next day or two, and it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, and I must admit, the one problem I think we've had in previous years was that whole sales and registration piece. And I think they may, this Friday opening work, this Friday pre-registration thing worked as well as it could. That could really make the whole Saturday feel a lot more relaxed, I think.
Well, that all depends whether it's a pre-registration or a registration. That all depends whether it's pre-registration for a 2-day event or it's registration for a 2.5-day event. Because you could just shift that problem half a day forwards.
Yes.
Now, there are other ways of still handling that situation or mitigating that situation. But, you know, I'm not going to get worked up about it. I'm not going to kind of say too much about it. As I say, we're going to be there in a week, and we're going to see how it goes. And, you know, they've officially announced now that the Warhammer Fest tickets are going on sale on the 10th of February.
Yes.
So, you know, that's becoming an event, a mini con. They might be extending the Weekender to a 2.5 day thing, maybe making a little bit more of it. I'm all for them trying these things. They're not all going to work, you know. Not everything that GW touches is going to turn to gold. We know that. We're reasonable like that. I'm not going to start, unless there's something that stands out as being a major issue, like, you know, oh yeah, we're going to shut the doors at the Weekender until 1 minute to 10, and then we're all going to let you run in. You know, that would be a stupid idea. You can see that beforehand, but none of what they've done so far from the outside can't be organised in a way that's positive. So,
yes, yeah.
I'm going to go open mind. Hopefully they do it in a way that works really well. I'm sure there's going to be the odd little thing that's like, could do that better, but there always is. But as usual, this podcast, yes, GW have sent us some stuff in the past. Not like we received loads of stuff from GW. We received some books, and we got Burning of Prospero and some other little bits and pieces, and thank you, GW, for doing that. And we are both fans of GW. Some will call us fanboys. I think that actually I will kind of say when I think they've not got something right. There's some people will say I probably don't, actually, to be fair, but there's a difference between, I think sometimes people don't appreciate what's being tried, and that sometimes you've got to appreciate that, again, yeah, so GW might try and fix something and it might not work. That doesn't mean they didn't do the right thing. Yeah, by trying to fix it, just means they chose the wrong option, as it were. You know, and sometimes you don't know until you get in these situations what actually going to happen, because, you know, they're on one side of the thing looking at it one way, we're on another side of it. Yeah. So, yeah, we try and be positive. This podcast is supposed to be a positive place for people to come and listen to us talk about the heresy and our enjoyment of it and everything else. That's why we don't sit here and, you know, I'm not going to, if I didn't like 40k at all, and in fact when I started this show I really wasn't that bothered by it, I wouldn't sit here and talk about how rubbish it is, this is much better, because, you know what, one of the listeners actually really loves 40k, cool, that's for them, it's just not for me at that time. And that's actually, you know, there's loads of reasons for that as well. We're always trying to be positive, we'll always try and be honest and critical as well. And I think we have managed to do that.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I love the majority of what GW do.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I wouldn't want to be critical for the sake of being critical. If something's, you know, not very good, like paint pot lids.
Oh, they're awful.
You know,
they are
we will say it.
You know, and I'm not even that bothered by it, but, you know, objectively, I can see, compared to a lot of other companies, they're awful. Are they better than the old ones where you used to, you know, you used to break the little nib off that you had to push with your two thumbs? That's you know, at least with
about the really, really old ones.
Yeah,
like
the white
90s.
Ones. Yeah, some companies still use them.
They are awful. They were awful.
They are.
I used to have a bottle opener to try and open mine when I was a kid.
Because, yeah, you used to end up breaking the tab off, and then you're doing it with your two thumbs, and eventually you'd spill one everywhere as you jolted. But they kept your paints better than these ones did.
And some people still, like, you know, put up pictures of their original paint pot that's still in full working order.
Yeah, from the boxes.
From 1980.
From the boxes with the golden demon on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Absolutely right. Yeah, the paint pots they've got now, I say, I'm a bloke who doesn't really care too much. I can objectively understand that they're pretty poor.
My favourite ones were the version before, you know, the the what's the right shape word? Not hexagonal or whatever.
Yes, yeah, they were.
Those pots with the flip lid, because they did a version with the screw lid. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
They were awful, because unscrewing the paint every time was such a faff. But then the flick ones, they're brilliant. They still hold a good seal on them, but they're so easy to flick open and shut. And if you flick them open, they stay open. So
yeah, the new system doesn't work that well on that. And some people have problems with dropper bottles, to be fair.
Yes, yeah.
But, they're not brilliant. So yeah, I think that we have shown a number of times that we've offered criticism. Last Weekender was, a prime example where we weren't satisfied with what had gone on. We've talked about models we don't particularly like. The fact is we try and do it in a way that is objective. So that wolf, I don't particularly like that wolf. It's one model in however long that I've not particularly liked, and I'm not suggesting it's not a good model. Just for me, there's something not quite right about it. Other people love it. Cool. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's just the way I'm going to feel about it. There's no point me kind of bemoaning it or anything like that. You move on with your life and move on from the stuff that gets you down. Move on to the stuff that makes you happy. There's loads of cool stuff to look for. So yeah, that was just a really random little bit there about the way I think we want the podcast to carry on working. And if it ever turned out that we were doing that, I think I'd stop. Because at the end of the day, this podcasting takes up a fair amount of the week when we're doing it. And if I wasn't enjoying the game, I wouldn't be doing the podcast. I do the podcast because I enjoyed the game, because of my love of the game, the background, everything around it. That's the reason I started the podcast. And I'm sure that's the reason that you're on here as well.
Yeah, because I just love Heresy.
Yeah, if I didn't love football, I wouldn't go and play football every Saturday. So there's no real difference there, is there? But yes, excellent stuff. So just a reminder, if you are at the Weekender, come say hi.
Yeah, please do.
Don't be afraid. We are very normal blokes, sort of. And there's trust me, Neil doesn't stand on ceremony at these things. It's fine. So
I like to be at a ceremony near the end. At a
ceremony, yeah, excellent. Awesome stuff. We'll leave this here and we'll come back and we'll talk to Rob about his experiences in the Heresy. Okay, well, joining me now is one Robbing. How are you doing, Rob?
I'm not so bad, Greg. Good evening. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Cheers. Now, Rob and I know each other from the old Warhammer Fantasy Battles scene a few years ago, since I last saw you at an event.
It was, the last time I saw you was Games Day 2012 when Book 1 was released, because you had a spare ticket and you posted up on Twitter.
God, yeah, that's a long time ago now.
That was. I got Book 1, and Aaron Dembski-Bowden, bless him, dragged me out of the building to go for a cig because he was busting, because he'd just done a sign-in, and he dragged me straight out before I had a chance to pay for it. So I walked out with Book 1 Betrayal on release day without giving anybody any money for it, so Forger will probably come knocking about that now, because I've never really told anybody.
They might do. They'll catch up with you in the end. It's fine. You'll have paid them back over the years.
Yesterday, yeah.
The first hit was free.
Yeah, it always is, isn't it?
That's it. Excellent. And so we used to meet each other every now and then. As you could probably tell, even the people from across the pond, Rob's got a slightly different accent to myself. We are from fairly different parts of the country.
Yeah, I'm from the right end. He's from the wrong end.
Something like that. And, so it wasn't a regular thing, but what we've been chatting a little bit, and you're just properly getting into the Heresy now, aren't you?
Indeed, yes. I've finally bitten the bullet. I've heard you on previous episodes refer to the old 40k fantasy split as safety bases and proper bases. And I used to be one of those people who derided 40k of being safety bases, and when you've proved you can play properly, will allow you something with corners. But I was always a massive fan of the fluff of the Heresy and the 40k even the 40k background. I just wasn't a massive fan of how the game played at that point, which was 4th, 5th edition. But then, as the Heresy started coming out, I was like, with novels from the Black Library, I thought, this would make some good narrative gaming, and there was a big rush amongst lots of people to build pre-Heresy looking armies, but using the 40k rules. And then, obviously, as last time I saw you at that Games Day 2012, they released Book 1, Betrayal, which I got my copy of, but they never did anything with it, really. I was a bit put off by the full financial implications of buying an all-resin army, which are still not insubstantial. But recently, relatively recently, with the release of the Calth box last year, or possibly the year before now, I lose track, all of a sudden that massive outlay took a huge hit with the plastics coming in. So on your recommendation a couple of months ago, I got myself the red books in iPad format, so I can take them to work and read them on my lunch break. And I've been investing in Prospero Marines to build myself some 6th Legion.
Awesome. Yeah, the red books help as well. That's another price-saving thing compared to buying the big black books.
It is, definitely. I think I'd prefer a physical copy. These are the first times I've had an official army book, codex, whatever, in a digital format, and I'm used to kind of having one book open and then flicking to another one, so having to bookmark something and then go back. But it's probably me just being rubbish with the digital format. But it is handy being able to carry everything on the one device.
They aren't as easy to flick through. When you've got a book, you even know this is roughly like 2/3 of the way through, and your fingers almost find it without too much thinking about it. With the iBooks, it does take a little bit longer. So they're great in certain ways, they're not so good in other ways. And if I had the disposable income, I'd have both. I really would. But
me too, indeed.
But yeah, money is not always so easy to get. Hold on.
No.
So I mean, if we go right back to the beginning, I mean, you talked about the books getting you in. I spoke to another old Warhammer player who had a podcast as well, Mr. Jay Hopkinson, who was talking about
J-Hop, who first appeared on my old podcast.
Indeed, another one with a funny accent. And he too was talking about, he just read the books and bought a load of miniatures and was painting them up, which is pretty cool. And I've been planning to do a segment sort of about someone's journey into the heresy. And with you messaging me, it was like, actually, that works. We can do that. So what we've got Rob on to do is, as we say, as you've just laid out, you're right at the beginning of your heresy gaming journey. So
yep, I am. You'll have to be gentle.
Yeah, we'll kind of see where you are, how you're going, and then down the line we'll revisit and did you? We'll go into that later. That's fine. So
okay,
Warhammer. Where did it start for you?
First things first was my science teacher back in 1990, certainly after the release of Rogue Trader, and I saw him. I used to get picked up later than all the other kids after school because my parents were teachers as well, so I went to hang out with Mr. Arnold in the science room, hoping that he'd light a Bunsen burner or something, but I saw him painting this small yellow figure. I can still remember it clear as day to today. It was a Firehawks Marine from the original RTB-01 Imperial Space Marine box set from around about the time that the first fluff for the Legion of the Damned appeared.
Sure.
That there were the Firehawks chapter that got lost in the warp and yada yada yada. And I'd been building airfix kits. My dad had built airfix kits when he was a kid, so by the time I was 7 or 8, I think I'd built 3/4 of the RAF and Luftwaffe between 39 and 45. But then I saw this little grey, what I thought was a robot. and then one that was bright yellow that he was painting. I was like, "What's that?" And he's like, "It's a model miniature." I was like, but what is it? It looks like it's a robot. And he's like, "No, it's a bloke in a futuristic suit of armour with a gun that fires explosive ammunition. And if he was in real size, he'd be about 8 feet tall." And little 10-year-old me, my head just exploded. I was like, "What? What is this? Tell me everything right now." And he said, "Oh, do you think people would be interested?" I said, well, I am, but I was massively unpopular at school, so I probably wasn't the best weather vane. But he ended up putting together a school club, and we used to play Rogue Trader on those big school science tables that were about 20 foot long.
Yeah.
Back in the day when Marines were toughness 3, and you could move and fire missile launchers, and Marines would retire and all that kind of stuff. So that was my first experience of it. And I remember going into the York store when I was about 11, about a year later or something like that, buying that RTB01 box set and going home and building them on the kitchen table and painting them horrendously with Humbrol enamels. Excellent.
Yeah, that's cool. And yeah, we will fast forward your journey into wargaming and your Warhammer armies, and as you say, so you picked up to 2012.
Yeah.
And you picked up the Heresy book. So what was the intention with you picking up that Heresy book?
Basically, I was just a bit of a completionist. I had all of the Forge World Imperial Armour books.
Right.
And have kept up with them, bar one. And this was a new book thing that they were doing. Because I've always been a bit of a bibliophile. And it was a new book thing they were doing. So I thought, well, it's expensive, but it's massive. And I've always found the Imperial Armour books to be good value, like you've said in the past, that kind of equation of cost to value. And I was like, well, if it's like the Imperial Armour books, but it's about the Horus Heresy, then that's awesome. Because in my head at the time, I was like, I would treat it like the Imperial Armour books. It would just be a coffee table book, a reference book to go back to read occasionally. And I didn't necessarily at that point have any plans to buy models and play games. But I suppose obviously back then, before book one was released, there wasn't the scene that there was now. It was just Forge World are working on something to do with the Heresy, and it's a big black book, and it's however many pounds, and people were just going to have a look and see what they thought about it.
Yeah, the Horus Heresy scene before that was people spending £30 a model. There was about, a small group of people who used to meet up at Warhammer World. Yeah. Grabbing one piece from a box set of Space Marines here and all that, trying to make their Marines. And that book, I picked it up with actually not much real intention to play it myself either. Funnily enough, back in the day, but got it. I was at the weekend, I was already kind of deep into it at that point. So 2012, that is, and that was summer 2012 back then, late summer.
Yeah.
So the novels have been out since 2010.
Yes, and I was a staffer when they were released. Not only a staffer, a massive Dan Abnett fanboy, horrendously so. Unfortunately, still am. Unfortunately for Dan's sake. So, Horus Rising came out. I don't think there was a staffer in the country that didn't buy that the second it was available. Because obviously back then as well, we didn't know how long it was going to take. We didn't know how far through the story it was going to be. We knew there was going to be at least 3, but in the build-up, as far as we were concerned, we thought they might cover the heresy in 3 books.
How naive we all were.
Yes, 41, 42 later. Yeah. 41 Master of Mankind.
I think there are some people running some books on how many there are going to be. I think Marcus, Pitt and I were guessing there's going to be about 55. And that's a guess. That's not insider knowledge. That is just us having a kind of, if we had £1, trading places style, we'd put it down at 55.
I'd say at least 50. It would irritate my sense of OCD if it was an odd number.
No, that's going to happen.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, we had no idea where it was going to go. So that came out. Horus Rising came out, and we were like, "Oh my god, he's kind of fallen already." Well, this won't take long. We'll maybe it's 5-10 books, because we saw after the first one they were like, they're not going. This won't be 3. This will last longer than 3. And we were all rabid for them. And we did in the York store. We did a book signing for when Dan did Legion, book 6, I believe it is. Legion, and it was about that kind of time.
7.
That on book 6, we're like, right, they've not done it in 5. And this book has possibly some of the biggest spoilers in 40k history, I think. 40k history.
Even now, those spoilers are big. At the time, they were mind-blowingly big.
It was paradigm. It really was a paradigm shift, that last third of that book. But it was then that we all thought, this isn't going away.
No.
This is going to keep coming. And this is going to keep coming. And then we got, I think it was Mechanicum after that. It was Mechanicum after that. And then Battle for the Abysmal, but hey-ho, can't have everything. And it just kept gathering and gathering and gathering and gathering. And then all of a sudden, after 7 or 8, maybe 9 books, we heard rumours that Forge World were working on something. And we started hearing that they were going to turn it into a playable format of the game.
Yeah.
And then everybody went crackers.
It was quite an interesting time, actually. I don't think we've ever talked about it on the show. For those who are new to the Heresy, Forge World was, before the Heresy, Forge World was always looked a little bit like side view from a lot of players, as, they made some cool stuff, but their rules weren't particularly great, and some of the models were a bit hard to put together and things like this. And they'd just started to do some Marines in older armour. And it was a bit like, people were like, this is a bit strange. Why are they doing older armour? They've never kind of done this before at GW.
Mark II armour, I've not seen that since 1991. What's going on?
Very strange. And then you kind of developed this kind of rumbling. It's like, they're going to do heresy. They're going to do heresy. And people were posing them questions all the time. It was like, no, we're not doing heresy.
And people going, nah, they can't be doing heresy. I mean, they won't be allowed. It's too much of an important part of the... It's too much of the IP. They're only allowed to make things to go with those big books that they release every so often that nobody's ever sure that anybody can afford it, that isn't staff.
And if they do heresy, does that mean Primarchs? That'd be stupid. That'd be ludicrous.
We'll never do Primarchs. You'll never see a Primarch model. You'll never see a Primarch model.
You can't stat it. And, fast forward however many years and Magnus the Red in plastic. And it's like, wow. Yeah, but it was such a different environment back then with reference to the Heresy. And, in fact, you giving me that date. This is the 5th Heresy Weekender, I think. I'm trying to remember. It's crazy. In 5 years. What's kind of happened?
The amount of stuff when you look back, or certainly I noticed it yesterday when I was at Warhammer World for the first time in however many years, certainly since they'd revamped it. And last time I went down there, if you ordered something from Forge World, it was a rather harassed looking chap in a blue workshop shirt would toddle off downstairs, go and knock on someone's door, pick it up and bring it back up to you in the Ziploc bag. And I walked through the doors yesterday, and there's this great big gleaming storefront. But the amount of stuff they've got in it, not just Marine stuff, not just 30k stuff. It's like, when did they do all that Necron stuff? Yeah. Turns out there is an Imperial Armour book I don't have, and that's where it's all from.
Cool. That's old Games Day as well. So that's 4 years old. I think that was the year they dropped Warhammer Forge.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yes, but you got Age of Sigmar, and it's mainstream now as well. This is everyone knows about Forge World now. It's a very different beast, which is very cool.
I was gobsmacked by the range of stuff, and anybody and by the Stormbird. I've now finally seen it. And good God, is that an impressive kit?
It is, yeah, absolutely.
I know there were some people saying it's too small, but
it's only one pattern of Stormbird.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be the smallest pattern, but unless you've got a tennis court to play on, it's big enough, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, we get to this point where Prospero Calths come out, and we've chatted, and you've decided, actually, yes, I can feasibly do a Legion on a budget, which is not unusual, I don't think, for
No,
us in the hobby.
no.
There are many people out there who particularly jumped on Calf because it was the simplest, best way of, making a hobby on resources that were limited, which is, at the end of the day, this is a hobby. It's not when you've got family, kids, mortgage, everything else, they all have to come first.
They do indeed.
So, did you already have in mind, before you even started, picking up models, what you were going to do?
I knew which Legion it was going to be. I bought the 2nd edition Space Wolf Army with my 12th birthday money. It's always been about the 6th Legion for me. Before, I think they'd even been numbered as the 6th. So they've always been my favourite chapter in 40k, Legion in 30k. When I decided I was going to make the leap, though, there was still no sight of Book 7.
Sure.
Everybody knew it was coming, but it was just a case of it's coming. Nobody knew when, so I was kind of thinking, well, do I just bite the bullet and go for another Legion so that I can actually play? And then I think it was one of your earlier episodes I was listening to while I was at work, and I think you and Neil both said at the same time when you were asking each other the same question, you both kind of answered the same time, don't do it. Don't do it, because you'll buy stuff that you don't want. And then the Legion that you really want to do will come, and you'll be like, oh, I've got to do it all again.
Yeah, I think, especially if you're on a budget, you've got that, and you are certain of your Legion. Not everyone is.
No.
But if you are absolutely certain, then it comes to that. Even for those guys who want to do Blood Angels, and they've only got those, they've got the Rights of War, but they haven't really got the units. People are getting a bit frustrated. I would say stick with it. You've got, you can
they've
still
got
play.
They've got more than us 6th Legion, us route players have at the moment.
Yes.
They've got a Right of War, might not be much, but it's more than we've got.
Yeah, and you can still play out of that Crusade book, and it can still be a fun army, and you have got, the Rights of War and the extra bits and pieces to make your army a little bit distinctive. And at the end of the day, if you're playing your mate down the club, then you want to add some rules on or make up a unit and crack on, just as long as you both agree. I definitely do think it's worth waiting. Fortunately, we've just seen that Angelus is on the list for the Heresy Weekender to talk about, which is supposedly Blood Angels and Dark Angels. So, we are going to be waiting a little bit longer for the White Scars, bless them. But they'll get their rules, and they're already pretty good without their own special units.
Rather ironic that the fastest moving Legion is the one that everyone's been waiting around for the most, or will have been by the time they're finished.
Well, yeah, they make their decisive move in the end.
Well, yes, exactly.
Exactly. Cool. So, in those terms, we have heard as well that, and I think Confirmation's come out with the little blurb about the Wolves list, and the Thousand Sons of the Wolves list, is they can be made in a very different way.
Yes.
But that's a can. And at the end of the day, as we said before, even if you don't particularly like that, you can still utilise the Crusade book, whatever the book's called now, whichever one it is, the most up-to-date one. How did you jump into just starting your Space Wolves?
Incredibly bravely by building Marines with bolters. I picked up some Mark III. I did a few people who wanted Custodes or just wanted the Sisters or wanted the Tartarus Terminators. So I was like, I'll take the Mark III Marines off you. So I've kind of begged, stolen and borrowed 70 of those. And with the potential for some more, I've just done a trade on the Heresy Trading Facebook group. Because I'm thinking, regardless of how divergent they are, there's going to be Marines with bolt guns.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I built some of those. I built a couple of Sergeants, because, again, regardless of how divergent they are, a pack or a unit is going to have an option for a Sergeant, and that Sergeant is 99% guaranteed to have access to a Power Fist, which is what I've given him. And again, he's 99% likely to have access to a Combi Melter, which is what I've given him. So just a bit of kit bashing, using a few bits from the 40k upgrade sprue, so the wolf pelt backpack,
Yeah.
or backplate rather, that fits very nicely onto the plastic. Mark III chest piece, just generic stuff that is definitely going to be in there, and see what comes. I've blocked out a few characters in plastic, standard issue Praetor, or what seems to be a standard issue Praetor, with a Paragon blade and an Architect pistol. Well, that's what I've modelled him with. We'll just see what comes out as far as the Wolf Lord or Jarl or whatever he's called, and
Yeah.
if I need to rebuild a few things, they're only plastics. I can easy to chop up and stick back together.
It's one thing on a budget as well. You don't mind rearranging things to buy a single hero so much.
No,
It's it's when it's the big groups of models or the tanks, those kind of things. Yeah, it starts to really build up then.
yeah,
Yeah, and the beauty is we're very close now to having that book out, and in fact, this goes out at the end of January. I strongly suspect that book will be up for pre-order, if not on the weekend, then very shortly after the weekend of the Heresy Weekender.
and your phone will be ringing, but it will be a video call, and I will expect you to turn the camera on your phone round.
There'll be, trust me, Garrow will be all over it from Heresy 30k on Facebook.
Yeah, he's already all over it. I don't know if you saw earlier, he posted that someone spotted on the front cover of Book 7 that was released on Warhammer Community
Custodians with
yesterday.
Bolters, yeah.
Yeah, Custodians with Bolter, and he referenced the picture from the Visions of Heresy. He knows his stuff, that fella, doesn't he?
He does, absolutely. Much better memory than I have, that's for sure. So the basic blocks are always going to be, you're going to have some Marines.
Yeah.
Some of those Marines will 90% of the time have bolt guns. So there is always a use for those guys within a force. So you're slowly building that up. Now, have you got an overall aim for the army, or are you waiting to see that book? Have you got an idea in your head of how you want it to play, or are you...
Not necessarily how I want it to play from a rules perspective. I just want to put models on the table that I think are cool.
Cool.
So, having built those sergeants and a load of Marines with bolters, just standing up a completely unpainted bare plastic 20-man tactical squad, it's like, yeah, they look cool.
Okay.
They've got a lot more visual impact than the 10-man units from 40k. So yeah, 20-man units, brilliant, and obviously everything in between. I want to put some Leviathan Dread or two on the table because I think they're brilliant, and probably something like a Spartan because it's a big, impressive centerpiece. Maybe he's a Typhon. Just whatever they release that I like the look of, I'll find some way of making it fit.
Sure, yeah. So this is very much, for you, it's a love of the game, love of the hobby army. There's no, I want to be able to do kind of this, and I want to. Is there any? Have you thought of any story behind your army? Or again, does that wait for the book?
Well, I'm deliberately avoiding Prospero.
Cool, yeah.
Because I think, come release of the book,
everyone's doing Prospero.
A lot of 6th Legion players are going to make the leap if they haven't already, and there's going to be a lot of candy red bits of armour on bases. I think, and I was thinking about going instead for the Death of Innocence.
Right, yeah.
So having blue and white bits of armour, dead world eaters, and stuff like that, just to. So yeah, I'm just going to try and distance it from that obviously Prospero look, because I think that's going to be very widespread. So I think that Death of Innocence, sanctioning the world eaters, would make a nice option. So I'm planning on just using normal bases. I'm not going to do my usual trick of buying resin bases. I found Parenthood's made me enjoy basing. It's one of those weird things that happens. Might not happen to everybody, but it's happened to me. I haven't quite decided how I'm going to go for the paint scheme for the army yet. Whether I'm going to go for dirty or a bit cleaner, or I'll just have to see how it goes. But I just want to put models on the table that I think are cool. So if I like them, they'll be going in. There'll be a fluff element of it. it's my way of justifying that I'm probably going to be taking some phosphex. In my mind, that the sixth, they're not sort of outright biological warfare maniacs like the 14th, like the Death Guard, but they will use whatever is necessary to get the job done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they would have access to them if they didn't, I'm sure they'd much rather hit somebody over the head with a big heavy piece of metal than fire a phosphex canister at them. But if phosphex is going to get the job done, then that's what they'll use. So there is going to be, I think, a little bit of that. Maybe there's a few quad mortars. I think the models are pretty cool. But I'm also trying to avoid being meta in any way or cheesy in any way. If I play somebody and they say, "Oh, that's a bit steep, is that list? That's a bit nasty," then I'll consciously tone it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's an ongoing subject. Is that very nature of people's perception of what's good and what's not, and everything else that goes with it. It still seems to be a common thing that whatever beat me must be over the top, as opposed to I didn't play very well, or I was a bit unlucky, or what have you, or the opponent didn't make a mistake. So there's always a fine line to walk on that one anyway. But yeah, no, I think that should be fine. So, have you got a goal with making an army at all?
I'm going to look. I'm going to listen to see when you're running an event towards the tail end of this year. If you do your 2 a year that you've mooted in the past, and that's what I'm looking for, something tail end of this year or this time next year. I'm going to give myself about 12 months to build it all up, get a few friendly games played with some local folks. I'm hoping there's going to be there's some Yorkshire Heresy people out there, and just see how it goes. But I'm attracted to the idea that once you pick a legion, it's kind of always ongoing.
Sure.
It's a very good business model, and one that I don't mind buying into, to be honest, because it just seems to make sense that if you made that commitment to a particular legion, then you're going to keep buying it and keep expanding it.
Yeah, I think they're very different personality types who do that. I'm one of those ones who, yeah, I've got my Stormcast for Age of Sigmar. I'm going to get everything for that Stormcast. You get the people who buy the whole chapter in Marines. Yeah, and then you get the people who are quite satisfied to, I want to play this list or this style of list. Here's my 3,000 points of White Scars. Okay, I'm done with them. Move on. And then those people who are like, I want to paint 8 single 1,000-point lists this year. So you do get different styles.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, for the other legions that I like, but I'm not sort of, they're not my legion, so to speak. I can see the appeal of, actually, I'd quite like a 3,000 points Salamanders or 3,000 points Death Guard, or, do a few Black Shields just for something that's a little bit different, or some Shattered Legions, so I'm not painting the same colour for 6 months. Yeah. But as far as the wolves are concerned, it's kind of, that's just an ongoing. That's just you keep releasing things, Forge World, I will eventually get round to affording it.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly, someone put, they were selling a Death Guard army on Twitter, and it was about 1,800 points, and I almost just bought the lot just to have as an allied contingent, or for small games. I was just so tempted just to go, actually, that's really cool, but it would annoy me that I hadn't painted it, I think.
Wouldn't take much to knock that up to 3,000, though. If it's,
absolutely.
1,800, I'll stick a Mastodon in, put a couple of knights in. Oh, look, I've got 3,000 points.
Desperately trying to paint what I've got at the moment.
Oh, it's the Knight Porphyrion you've got, isn't it? Not the Mastodon. I was thinking he's got one of them big expensive ones. Yeah,
the Porphyrion is still being put together by Joe. That will take a while. I've got the other knights to go with it, and the dread of the Heresy Weekender after quite an expensive month on the credit card already, £320 on a Kickstarter, and Adepticon at the end of March. And it's like, okay, there's some overtime coming at work. That'll be useful.
You're just going to have to face it that your credit card's going to be broken by the end of the month.
Yeah, the Weekender might not be too bad. It might just be a big black book and a couple of bits. But we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. So yes, you talked about weekends and events. I will be running. Can't remember if I've mentioned it or not, but early September. So I think we're talking first weekend of September, first weekend or 2 of September. Just be aware that there might be an event somewhere further up the country than normal. So I do need to get on that. I do still need to make the FAQ for the event in May, but with the latest 40k FAQs coming out, I've got to look at some stuff. We'll talk with Neil about some of them, because there's some interesting answers as usual. We play the game very differently sometimes, different groups of people. So there's stuff to be doing on that. And as you say, once you've found, do you know of many gamers up your way?
I know a few, yeah. There's a guy I used to work with up until recently. He's got a sort of man cave at the bottom of his garden, and plays some games down there. And a couple of miles down the road in Pontefract, there's a new shop has opened up in the last couple of months, and he lets people come down on a Thursday night and play whatever they want.
Okay. Cool.
M&L miniatures, which is quite cool. It's fairly spit and sawdust at the moment, but like I say, he's only been open a couple of weeks, couple of months. But he's got 10 6x4s, and he's planning on doing barbecues in the summer, so that certainly gets my vote.
Excellent. So at some point, we're going to have a Romming held event in Pontefract.
the Burt Hammer 30k Invitational. But yeah, we'll have to see. You'll have to have a paddle up as well. I know it's a long way up the country from you, but we're only an hour from Warhammer World where I am now.
In fact, I'm going up to Durham in the start of March.
Well, you'll be coming past me then.
Exactly, that's proper north. That is. I'm scared.
I was going to say you best bring your passport, because you get to Sheffield and we start checking. Make sure you got your visa.
That's it. So definitely there's potential for that moving forward. So hopefully that gives an idea of who Rob is, what he's up to. Maybe you find yourself in a similar situation, or not even in that situation yet. Maybe you're still thinking about it, say in a few months or so. Hopefully we'll get Rob on, having played a few games, having got the book. And all those, and we'll have a little chat about kind of where you're going, what's been going on, and review maybe some of your decisions you've made or what have you.
Mistakes, more likely, but yeah, we'll call them decisions.
Yeah, just, mistakes are the best decisions. Many times you learn better from them, allegedly.
Well, definitely, yeah. I mean, I can sling you some pictures and stuff as well to how things are going, and keep it going that way. I'll find somewhere to document it myself on the web somewhere, and might see if you can pimp me out a link.
You do use your Twitter account occasionally?
Yes, I for the PG-13, I might just keep that to myself though, because I do tend to go on rather political rants on my my Twitter. But at LPlebian on Instagram. And I do own the domain name for www.theet.com, as in.
All right.
I snaffled that after Prospero Burns was released, so I might do something with that. So, but I'll keep you posted so that you can let folks know if I decide to do that. If you want to link to it, that'd be cool.
Excellent. Potential for someone else there who may be wanting to help as well.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's been really good. I've had a few people contacting me recently saying, this thing you've done is good idea, but not done very well. Do you want some help? I'm like, yes. Exactly what I was thinking. There's lots of helpful people out there and stuff. And I'm certainly going to be looking at, there's certainly Facebook groups for Space Wolves, Volker, Fenricia, I think 30k is one, and what have you.
I've joined that one. I think that was the sort of most, what's the way to put it, most coherent one that I managed to find.
Yeah, and then say Heresy 30k as a forum. They've got the Space Wolf bits going on in there, and what have you, bits dotted around. But maybe we'll see. We'll see what's happened in however long we do it.
Yes, definitely.
But brilliant. Thanks for coming on, Rob.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for having me on.
That's quite all right. We'll speak to you again soon.
All right then, buddy. Take care.
Cheers. Okay, welcome again to the Black Library section, Michael.
Hi, Greg.
How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks.
Excellent. And this episode, we're going to be looking at Talon of Horus by Aaron Debsky-Bowden as a not quite a heresy book, but very linked into the heresy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's timely to talk about it. It looks like this year we're going to get the next in the series. And also, after a pretty long wait, we finally got it out in paperback for anyone who didn't fancy splashing out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to go, again, spoilers on this. We are going to talk about it. If you are waiting till that paperback's out, then, feel free to pause it, come back and listen to it once you've read it. I got it on ebook. I must admit, I did want to read it. I wasn't going to get the first edition copy and decided with my books I've only got space to collect the Horus Heresy stuff.
Yeah, I have to say I succumbed to the first edition. It is one of the best in terms of production that they've done, but they were pretty shockingly expensive. But just one of those things. I'm a bit of a sucker for that sort of thing.
Yeah, they weren't too expensive because they sold out quick. So it's obviously right for the market.
Yeah, well, clearly.
Yeah, and I think it's something we want to do across this part of the show is to talk about characters who are very prominent in the heresy who have their 40k, or not even 40k, but the periods of time between have those stories being told. So, what's his name? The Fabius Biles out now.
Yep.
So we got that, and a number of other characters that we could have a look at down the line as well, and expand out.
I think that's right. But I mean, Abaddon, however you're supposed to say it. I'll go with Abaddon. He's one of the key characters, isn't he? Because he's such an important sort of antagonist character in the ongoing 40k setting. He was an important character in the heresy, so I think he's a good one to start with. And arguably, was the Talon of Horus really the first of the sort of following on from the heresy series that we got?
Probably, yeah, because it was before Beast Rises and any links that are there.
Yeah, before the Ahriman series came out as well,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe the choice of setting it then might have been helped by the heresy, but Aaron's talked for a long time that Abaddon, in not just the novels but the background fluff as well, has not maybe been given his fair due. And as a result, a number of gamers and readers and what have you see him as like failed on. 13 failed Black Crusades, or 12, 13, depending on before they reset the last one, and seemingly has achieved nothing whilst sitting there saying that Horus was weak, Horus was a fool. One of his famous quotes. Yeah, without really doing a lot, he managed to get a sword and what have you. And we should probably cover that. So, in the background, he's had these. We're now in the 13th Black Crusade. It's going on in 40k, and this too actually ties into Talon of Horus. There's nothing failure about what Abaddon's doing there. It's
no, I think that's right. And the fans who sort of see him and think, but he's not achieved anything. I think that's sort of fair enough to see on the surface, but I think we're going to increasingly see, certainly, you talk to some of the Black Library guys, and I think we're seeing this with the Games Workshop stuff that's coming out, that's a perception based on an imperial viewpoint, and actually, if you make the assumption that each Black Crusade he was trying to get to Terra, sure, he didn't do it. But was he actually trying to do that? And I think we'll increasingly see that that's maybe not the case.
Yeah, and as far as the text goes, this is all in the kind of the rule books and things like that. One of them, he gained his sword or or what his sword is now. That was one of them. The Blackstone Fortresses has been one of them. I can't remember. There's loads of little things where they've seemingly got to a point and retreated back into the Eye of Chaos. And of course, the Imperium, as you say, oh look, we fought him off, we've scared him off. He's not as hard as he thinks he is. And as the brilliant the Imperial, the Facebook thing they're doing at the moment, their propaganda, I can't remember the name of it. Their little guardsman bit would use it as propaganda. It would be like, yeah, we beat him off. And he's not coming back for years and years, and don't have to worry about him. But, as you say, he's been collecting there, and time flows differently as well in the warp. We know it's not 10,000 years in the warp. And not just that, there's stuff going on in the warp as well. So, collecting a group of, even immediately after the heresy, trying to bring these groups together was not easy. And that's probably only got more difficult as time's gone on. They become more independent, which is, a credit to Abaddon in that first place, in that he has managed to have 12 great crusades. And if they were all failures, the Chaos Gods wouldn't have looked at it like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm not that au fait with it to know if all 12 have been sort of named and explained as yet. But I think we'll probably find out more of that as we go. Some of it will be gathering his goodies, getting his sword and what have you. I'm sure some of them will turn out they've been achieving other objectives which are less sort of possession based. You factor those in. Factor in, like you said, managing to keep control of his disparate warbands over all that period of time. That's not going to have been an easy thing. He's a bit like Archaon before the end times. He's sort of Lord of Chaos Undivided, isn't he? He's essentially saying, look, I will court the attentions of all the Chaos Gods, but I'm not going to dedicate myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the Independent Characters podcast recently did a whole section on the Black Crusades because of the current Black Crusades. If you look back through their fairly recent back shows, then you'll find the details of each individual crusade as much as we got, and for some it's only a few lines. But yep, you're right. He's there. He has the patronage of all four gods, which in itself is something that does not happen very often. He has kind of this ability to approach anyone and drag them in. There have been other Black Crusades or crusades coming out of the Eye of Terror. Yeah, Abaddon hasn't done them all himself, but these are the big ones. These are the ones that are the scariest to the Imperium. And Talon of Horus takes us right back before any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess if you haven't read it, it's perhaps not what you're going to expect. It's probably worth, if that is the case, reading Extinction first, the little short story that comes beforehand that sort of talks a little bit about how Abaddon reacted in light of what happened at the siege. But certainly, sort of at the start of Talon of Horus, he's not really on the scene, and he's doing his own thing that's probably not what you would expect him to do based on either Abaddon in Horus or Abaddon as the despoiler and the big bad of 40k.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I really like the way it's gone on. I think to have just centred on him immediately would have left a lot. It would be difficult to kind of get a real grip on the character, I think, and it would be easy for him to become very two-dimensional. And the way that they kind of discover him and what he is allows for this character to build, but also sets the scene really well for what's going on around him. And I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. You can imagine what would happen after the fall of Terror, when, the almost fall of Terror, should I say, and the bad guys are scattered without the charismatic figure of Horus to then lead them. The pettiness of people like the Night Lords and the Emperor's Children and all that. And then what's going on in the warp immediately after that is it's really cool to read about because it's not something I've thought about a huge amount. But Aaron shows us a little bit of what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, arguably, not many of us had really thought about it. I guess before the Heresy series happened, the Heresy was just a thing, and we all knew Abaddon and all the Chaos Legions chapters, whatever you want to call them, as they were. Going back and showing the Heresy sort of right from the outset certainly made me think, oh, hang on a minute, there's more to this, which I think Aaron was really keen. It seems like he was really keen to explore. And I think what he's done really cleverly is saying, well, look, Abaddon's a really interesting character here, and there's a load of stuff that's going on that's worth us looking at, but let's not look at it from Abaddon's perspective. So for anyone who hasn't read it, it's worth pointing out straight away that this is not written as from a first-person perspective of Abaddon. It's written from the perspective of somebody else who views Abaddon through his own viewpoint and his own prejudices and experiences. And that makes it for a really interesting tale that's probably not what you might expect.
No, absolutely. And in fact, even from that point, we're getting the character of Kaon repeating a story that's happened. You know, which again leaves a lot open to try and work out what's going on there, because you've got two timescales that are being talked about as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Really so there's Kaon as he is in inverted commas now, which is explaining his story to another listener. I don't want to say that's maybe a spoiler too far to explain what that is. But then there's Kaon as he was at the time, originally a member of the Thousand Sons, encouraged to join Abaddon at a certain point. So you've got this concept of this character who's a hugely powerful sorcerer, and that straight away is cool. He's going to see Abaddon in a very specific light. I don't think you were, Greg, at Aaron's seminar at Black Library Live. Someone asked why Aaron chose Kaon, why he chose a Thousand Sons character, and it boils down to sorcery's cool. Which is fair enough, you know. Novels can be about loads of interesting things, but if you're an author, I guess you've got to pick something that you're interested in, and so setting your main protagonist as, let's face it, a pretty damn powerful psyker. Yeah, that's a cool concept, and I think that comes through.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly towards the end of the book, it allows for something that couldn't happen without that kind of character there. So it can get you out of a situation as well.
I think, yeah, totally. I mean, arguably, if it hadn't been Kaon, if it had been someone else, you could still have had that, but then it would have been someone looking at a psyker performing this amazing jaw-dropping feat, and so seeing it from the perspective of the psyker, yeah, it works really nicely.
And it would also be a little bit of, oh, isn't it handy we brought this psyker along with us, whereas actually having it as such a key character means, no, it's just part of their story, and it was an option that was open, rather than a bit of, I need to do this, get Terry Gilliam in to draw a spaceship. You know, it's that can happen when you have these things. I mean, Kaon himself is I really enjoyed the character right from the start. Here's a guy who's pretty assured of himself, I think we'll put.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, a typical Thousand Sons in that he thinks he knows better than almost anyone, if not everyone in the room, what's going on, what to be done, what can be done about it, and has no kind of qualms about his abilities in doing so either. It does have a couple of Rubicane Marines with him, which give a nice little grounding and insight into a character who, again, it could very much be all that ego, and yet there's something else there with what's going on with those guys, which gives another dimension to his character, which is really cool. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, this is an interesting thing to talk about. Is I imagine when, I can't really quite remember that far back, but you know, when all of us were thinking about hearing about this book coming out, and the assumption it would be from Abaddon's perspective, and so on and so forth. When you first read it, there's a large part of this book which is purely about Kaon. You know, Abaddon doesn't come in for a while. I mean, what can you remember? how you felt as you're reading this, thinking, hang on, this is interesting, because it's not about Abaddon yet. It's not about the Black Legion or the Sons of Horus. This is a slow burn build-up to essentially what becomes a reveal. I thought that was really interesting. Do you remember that being something that was in your mind as you were reading it?
I knew that it was about the formation the pre-formation of the Black Legion. So I knew this wasn't the Black Legion. As some people just thought that as soon as you went into the High Horus, they became the Black Legion. So I knew that, and I knew therefore that there was going to be some build-up. And to be honest, I think I was just quite happy to go with the story, because I think partly because Kaon was so cool, particularly the first point. The point he draws his tarot out. The idea of those cards and having those spells locked up in them was just like, that's amazing.
Yeah, there's something really cool, especially because a lot of the Thousand Sons legionaries we've seen so far have been pretty noble sort of guys. Ahriman, up to this point in the Heresy, has been.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who sort of traps demons. And carries this power around with him. And you're thinking, oh, okay, hang on, this is actually quite scary. I mean, you wouldn't want to face this guy.
No, yeah, it's the first Thousand Sons we've really seen post Planet of the Sorcerers. So at that point, we've seen either Thousand Sons who haven't joined up, or we've seen them on the Planet of Sorcerers only. And this year we're going to get to see that story go. But we're going to get to see some very prideful people who, again, seem to be fairly honourable, have performed honourably all the way through, even in the Primarch's book as well. But, as soon as they kind of make that decision, how do honourable people make that decision when it's, they haven't been seduced over a period of time. They haven't had, Magnus hasn't had his brothers convincing him for a period of time. He's basically been faced with this option that he thinks the Emperor probably wants him dead, and he's just acted to save his legion. And he knows that maybe he's already, by his own fault, he's damned his own legion anyway. So how do the minds deal with that? And hopefully Graham will show us quite a bit of that in the next book, in Crimson King. But this is a guy who's kind of embraced, as you say, his power, and decided that actually, okay, I can do this. These are tools. I'm going to use them. Knowing that they're still dangerous, but it is a very interesting concept.
I think so, and it's also nicely different to Ahriman. So I can't quite remember the timeline of when Ahriman Exile came out in relation to Talon of Horus. I sort of feel like we know Aaron and John are good mates, so they must have been discussing this sort of thing. But Ahriman his greatest flaw is his arrogance and his pride and his inability to see his weaknesses. But despite all of that, he's really trying to do the best thing for his legion. Kaon, that's not what he's about. He's given up on the idea of the Thousand Sons as a coherent legion, and I think that in itself sets him apart from Ahriman. And it's really nice that the two series can then run, I wouldn't say side by side, but they can run and they can overlap a little bit. Kaon and Ahriman, have a relationship to a certain extent. For anyone who's read the full Ahriman series, there are some links between the two, but there's definitely a nice demarcation between them. And even though he's one of the powerful Thousand Sons, he's definitely a character in his own right. He's independent, and he feels really different.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I think we're going to see across all the legions, particularly the traitor legions post Heresy. Is how do they deal with that? And every character will deal with it slightly differently. Magnus, the whole Magnus Ahriman thing has meant that. The Thousand Sons is a fractured legion in itself. Yeah. Anyway, we can already see that happening with the Emperor's children in the Heresy. The Sons of Horus, bless them, they're left leaderless, as are the Night Lords pretty soon afterwards. So, and they're fractured as well. So you can you can see right from the start these war bands, as they become known, going their own way and then becoming their own, having their own identity, as it were. The Thousand Sons, particularly with Kaon, it's nice. I suppose it works in a really good way in that they are quite independent. And
yeah, by virtue of exactly who these characters are. These are sorcerers. They are brothers, but maybe they just sort of set apart from the outset a little bit differently to some of the other legions.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many less of them to start with anyway at the outbreak of, the Great Crusade because of the issues they've had. But then with Ahriman's rubric, that kind of fractures it even more because there's less of them then. And so having this lone guy doesn't seem wrong at all. It seems perfectly acceptable in a Thousand Sons. You can imagine it really easily.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it's a cracking story from there. We got some of the other characters involved. What's the name of the thing in the ship? Gonna have to pull my brain to you.
Anamnesis, I think.
There we go. Yeah, I'll let you say that. Yeah. Again, one thing we see here with Aaron is that is something so 40k. But I don't think we would see it in a great many books.
Mm.
And it's a character he's got two characters. He's got the other character that's roaming around on the ship as well, who are pulled into this book in such an important way, and are going to have great importance going forwards. That you wouldn't immediately think, oh, okay, it's a book about Abaddon and the Black Crusades and the Black Legion and everything else. Oh, I'll put these two in. That makes sense. It's very much a kind of side swipe. All right, they're in there, and they're gonna mix it up as they go through, which is really, again, creates another kind of expectation almost, which is almost the wrong word. You don't want to say that around Aaron, but a hope that, or an intrigue into what these characters are then going to bring in, because it's not going to be standard Marine ways of thinking.
No, absolutely not. And I guess that's quite an interesting concept, isn't it? The ways of thinking, because you talked before about the different legions, different traitor legions fragmenting, and the Sons of Horus obviously had the strongest leadership because during the heresy they weren't fragmenting; they were completely behind Horus. Obviously, at the end of it, that fails, and they take the brunt of the sort of the ire of the rest of the legions. But then it takes someone like Abaddon to almost put aside really who he was during the heresy and form the Sons of Horus along with all the rest of these war bands, drawing in characters like Kaon and the Anamnesis and these really interesting disparate sort of characters to form the heart of what will then become the Black Legion. And I think that's sort of what Aaron set out to do here. He's not saying, look, by the end of this book, you're going to know how the Black Legion was formed and it's all going to be ready. And that's it. I mean, that's absolutely not the case. This is the start of a series. And so he's pacing himself, but he's really drilling into this concept that this is not the Sons of Horus.
Oh yeah, definitely not. And indeed, yeah, that's really put through at the start of the book. If you need it explaining to you in very simple terms, it is done. And I think in some ways that had to be done because of the preconceptions of the Black Legion, the Black Crusades, and Abaddon himself. Because I think Aaron was extremely aware of what people's thoughts were, and so he has to break them down to allow someone, because not everyone can do it. It's easier for some people than others, should I say? It's to think, actually, let's go into this and see what's going to happen. So, yeah, you do get this real kind of definition of what is going on. And Abaddon's character in the Horus Heresy, the Battle of Terror and probably the Battle on the Vengeful Spirit has had an effect on him, big time. And it's profound in a way, because this is a very different character.
I think it's incredibly profound. I think, especially once we see the Siege of Terror, once we get to see exactly what he got up to, and sort of, well, once Horus is dead, spoilers, like, how did Abaddon find out what happened there? That's going to be really interesting, because there's going to be that moment of him going, "Oh crap, this hasn't worked." And then, if you read the short story Extinction, you get a little bit of a sense of how he's sort of gone, "I have to go and take some time. I have to figure this out." And that's where he is at the start of the Talon of Horus, which is super interesting. And he's lost that sort of choleric, fiercely angry sort of characterization that we see of him earlier on. He's part of the Mournival, but he's definitely the rage there. And that sort of, for me, that was sort of how I pictured him in 40k originally. But I think Aaron's done a really interesting thing of really breaking that character down and go, no. He's his sort of, like I said, his choleric side. That's not what he's channeling now. He's channeling determination more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's taken time. You know, this is not 2 days after the vengeful spirit flees terror. No. This is a little while on, and this is he's purposefully had made that time as well. So we are getting a very deep Abaddon who's reached his conclusions thanks in part to what goes on in the books.
Yeah, definitely. He's got perspective by this point. So yes. When Kaon meets him, you know, we're introduced to the vengeful spirit again, sort of as a character in itself, and the way that Abaddon's dealing with that. There's some really interesting stuff goes on there. And that scene, I mean, I don't know if you felt the same thing. That scene where you're like, wow, this is completely not the character I thought he was going to be, and it's so much better.
Yeah, definitely, and that's highlighted particularly for me in, you know, one of the driving forces of this book right early on is, I mean, might as well say, we did say spoilers earlier, spoiler here, you know, they're trying to bring back Horus, trying to clone Horus. And his
Abaddon isn't.
No, Abaddon isn't.
He's not too keen on it.
No, exactly. But his reaction to people trying to do that, it was, you know, very clear. It's like, well, no, that's not the right way to do things.
Yeah, definitely. And you get the sense that he's sort of learned from the Primarch's mistakes, and that's potentially an incredibly arrogant thing for him to think. But actually, he's sort of right. And Fabius and co are trying to bring Horus back. That's a risky move. That's a brave thing for them to attempt, but it ties really nicely in with how Abaddon would react.
Yeah, definitely. It creates this, you know, it creates a spark, which is always good. You're going to need that, and the response is kind of definitive in how he approaches. Like, what are we going to do about this? But also, there's that little spark of the old Abaddon there. It's not, you know, this is not a guy who's just been sitting around thinking and has changed into this monk type character.
No, he's definitely not a pacifist, is he?
No. I think maybe you're talking there about him thinking he can do better than the Primarchs. We talked many times, authors have talked many times, that the Primarchs are heightened beings in that all their positives and all their negatives have been heightened in that kind of sense. And maybe that's something where, you know, the pride of Horus, where, yeah, a man's got this pride, but he knows that actually what Horus chose to do wasn't necessarily the best thing.
Yeah, definitely. And that seems to be something that struck a chord with, certainly with readers, but I think with authors as well. Because if you look at the Ahriman books, arguably Ahriman's doing the same thing. He's saying, well, Magnus isn't going to do anything to help us. It's got to be me. I can do better than this. And the same thing with Fabius Bile. I don't know if you've read Primogenitor. I don't know. And if anyone who's listening, who hasn't read Primogenitor, go out, buy it. It's brilliant. There's a recurring theme going through that. Fabius really sees it as his responsibility to safeguard his version of humanity, and he's looking at what people like Horus did and saying, no, that's not the right thing to do. I have the vision for this. So it's clear that a few people have picked up on the same thing. I mean, we talk about sort of arrogance before. Obviously, the Primarchs are these, like I say, these heightened beings, but Space Marines are to a lesser extent. And it's still a really interesting concept, I think, to play around with these guys who are, compared to a normal human being, you know, they are pretty much demigods, and they have these grand ambitions. And I mean, I think Aaron's done a really good job of making that realistic and understandable and relatable, because arguably it could be just sort of these lofty ambitions that you can't relate to, but I think it comes across as actually, no, I see what he's getting at.
Yeah, they're in that bit where they're, as you say, that they're grand ambitions, but feasible, and yet they're not. It would be easy to make them be too petty as well. Because at the end of the day, you know, the Cursed Legions were smashed to pieces and sent back, and there are 100 million ways to get them back into the fight, but picking the right ones is ultimately what's going to make that character level 4. Because if they come back for the wrong reasons, you're not going to buy it. So, or you're going to get bored of it. So yeah, no, I think he's done really well on that, and I think testament to, you know, the first edition sold based on Talon of Horus and ADB's name, because no one had read it to comment on it. No. So that's fine. But it's continued to sell, which is not only a testament to the name and the title, but must be to the quality of the book. So,
yeah, I think that's definitely right. It's interesting that it's taken so long. I've talked about this on the blog about paperbacks, trying not to sound like a broken record. It took 2 years, a little over 2 years, I think, for it to get a paperback release, which is a little bit weird, but, you know, doesn't matter. That's a thing. It's out in paperback. It's now available to anyone and everyone. It's definitely one of those ones that I think I've yet to see anyone in person to say they didn't like it. I think people have some criticisms of it, like people have criticisms of every book. For me, I didn't really. I read it, like I said, I got the first edition, I sat down and read that. It did not take me very long. It's pretty much straight through, just thinking, this is the sort of writing that I want to read. It's post-heresy writing, not just in terms of the concepts, but I think in terms of the approach and the style of the writing. It's great stuff. Aaron's not the quickest of writers, but, you know, we're due the next one this year. He said very recently that it's pretty much done. He talked in his seminar at Black Library Live about how, you know, the plan is absolutely to get it out this year. There's going to be a lot of hype, I think, around that. But I think it all boils down to the fact that, yeah, it is Aaron. He's got a big following. Yeah, it is about Abaddon, and it's sort of a nice link to the heresy. But it was just a really good book.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people wouldn't still talk about it had it not been a good book. And they do, and they treat it like that. In general, the places where I see people talking about GW novels, they are quite quick to criticise. So, it stood that test of time. And so it's coming out. I think maybe the paperback issue was that 2 years was all the GW issues, all the Black Library publishing issues they had as well, which I'm sure played a part in slowing things down. And it had an effect across various parts of the publishing arm of GW. So, hey-ho, hopefully the next one comes out in a more timely manner.
I think it will. I mean, I think we're going slightly off topic here, but I think we can clearly see that whatever changes have been taking place within Black Library, we are really reaping the benefits now. Things seem to be efficient, positive. I don't think there's any doubt. You know, we're back on track. I think that probably does mean that things like paperback releases and all that sort of stuff will be dealt with in a much better way. We can talk to our blue in the face about the impact of different formats on things like the Heresy series, which is an interesting question, but ultimately a sort of cyclical one. I don't think you're ever going to get to a solution. The key thing for me is, cool, the paperback of this great book is there. I'm pretty sure the next one we'll see a quicker release. I think the next one's called The Black Legion, Is that right?
You might be right. Yeah.
So I think it's become known as the Black Legion series. I had it in my head, maybe I just made this up, but I had it that it was originally going to be a trilogy. But Aaron's recently said that actually there's a feeling that it could be more of a setting. Yes. And I think that's maybe a little bit of hyperbole there. I don't think it can be a setting like the Heresy can be a setting, because it's very much Aaron's thing, and I can't see anyone else getting stuck in as a co-writer on this sort of thing. But I think it could be a long-running series, maybe a sort of, arguably a Gaunt's Ghosts sort of thing, as these things, these individual stories within the wider arc continue. I think that would be cool.
That's exactly what I was going to say, yeah. In fact, the hardback does have book 1 of the Black Legion series on the back.
Oh, okay.
So to confirm that, originally, I think he pitched it as a trilogy, if I recall what Aaron said correctly. He pitched it as a trilogy, and they said, well, do you want to limit yourself to a trilogy? We can see this going on a bit longer than that. So, yeah, it'll be his storyline, I'm sure, to play with, much like, as you say, much like the Gaunt's Ghosts or Eyes and Horn, something like that. So, which is great, because that means that Aaron can take more time with what he wants to tell, because it's Abaddon. There are certain big things that you need to hit because they're written in the background. Yep. But it allows him to play around those a little bit more. And we've had hints about who he's going to meet as well coming up, and we know there's certain things that will happen. So it would be great to see them kind of come to life, and I'm sure we're going to get people bemoaning the fact that the next book's not out quick enough, but that is always the case. So
yeah, it's just a fact of life these days, really, isn't it, with Aaron?
Well, it's a fact of life with, I think, us as consumers, that we're so used to getting things when we want them.
That's true.
That we tend to kind of push a little too hard when some things just can't be done. So, but I think we've done... Is there anything more you want to bring out on?
Well, I mean, I think it's the sort of book we could talk about for a long time. I would say for anyone who either hasn't read it or has read it and is interested in following up, mentioned as before the short story Extinction, which is by Aaron. It's definitely worth reading. I think there are some clear links. I would absolutely recommend get on to the Ahriman series for anyone who hasn't, because that links up in little ways, but just complements this really nicely. We talked before about Fabius Bile, so he's involved in this to do with the whole cloning of Horus concept. There's obviously Fabius Bile Primogenitor, which you could go off on a tangent with. And I think what's really interesting is that there's so much that's now becoming linked in these funny little ways. The Heresy's obviously proved that there's a desire and appetite from us as the readers for these interlinked stories. So if you've read this, crack on. There's a ton of cool stuff that's linked to it, and just get out there and enjoy. Yeah,
too right. Excellent stuff. I think we can leave that one there then, and we're going to you're going to be at the Heresy Weekender as well, aren't you?
I certainly am.
Excellent. So what we might do is get you on to talk about the book sections of that when we cover it. Because
let's do it.
I'm sure your note taking will be probably better than mine. Brilliant stuff. We'll see you again.
Yep, look forward to it.
Cheers. There we go. Episode 60 in the bag. And we'll be cracking on and say next episode will be Weekender coverage. It falls quite well this time. For once, we're going to have an event and then enough time to record before our next episode, which is good.
Handy.
Yeah, so plenty of notes to be taken. If you do want to know what's going on at the Weekender, follow Imperial_Truth on Twitter and on Facebook. Garrow as well on Facebook, 30k forums, and then go to the blog sites that you know don't just try and confuse and spread rumours and things like that. So, Battle Brothers, talking to Chris from Battle Brothers, they seem to be doing some cool stuff up in Scotland. I think they might be at the event. I'm trying to remember who's told me they are and who aren't. Battle Bunnies are quite good as well. And there's a few others out there as well, and you all know where they are. But Garrow does some sterling work, as we've mentioned many times before. And
in some ways, actually, even if you're at the event, it's easier to look on Twitter to find out some information.
If you just want info, yeah.
Because they, some people collate it beautifully.
Yeah, so sometimes that kind of gets sifted a little bit and sorted as it goes through, and sometimes all of us that are writing it down mishear something or misunderstand something. But yeah, you'll find out the information, and particularly that, well, it'll be interesting, whether it's the Friday evening or the Saturday morning when all the pictures, all the new stuff can be seen. I've got a feeling that might still be Saturday morning. So
do I. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
So
as well.
yeah, 9, 10 o'clock-ish Saturday morning, 9:30, whatever time it is. Start looking on your Twitter accounts and your Facebooks, and all the pictures will be doing the rounds, I'm sure, which will be cool. So yes, and of course, I'm at Child of Fang on Twitter if you want to see some AOS stuff as well. You never know.
And I'm at Neil Paints on virtually everything.
Yeah, but you mainly use Instagram, don't you?
Yeah, I must admit, I found Instagram to be a lot quicker and easier to post stuff up, and also it's much more about the photo than it is about. I find Twitter, there's lots of people that are social commentary, and and I'm really just wanting to look at pictures.
Yeah, that's fair enough. What Twitter is really good for is discussing the hobby. Instagram, yeah, as you say, Instagram is all about the pictures. Twitter, you tend to get, particularly, I'm talking about the Age of Sigmar community quite a lot. Little kind of tidbits of news and stuff like that, or rules, or an idea, and then that grows into a small conversation, which is cool. But still with pictures as well. So, yeah, I'm looking on the Instagram a little bit more, and I'll be I should really. I put a couple of photos up. I need to put a few more up, but I'm slowly breaking into Instagram, which is cool. We should again mention the charity raffle, shouldn't we? So, still plenty of time to get your entries in. It shuts on the 10th. So the 10th is the last day you can put your entries in. So all the way up to the 10th of February. Including the 10th of February, should I say.
And including the Heresy Weekender.
Yeah, giving me money at the Weekender might not be the best idea, because I will lose track of who's giving me money for why.
Yeah, that is probably true.
So it is better if you follow the PayPal. It is a real email address on there. Terry Pratchett fans might recognise that email address. They might not, because it's quite an obscure reference. And please remember to put Evelina in the notes. I've had a couple of people not do it, and I've also been trying to sell a load of my stuff on Twitter. So when I get £5 or £10 in, and I've just sold something for £5 or £10, it's easy to get that money lost, and I'm sure you guys don't want to put £10 into the raffle and end up just giving me £10 instead. So yeah, if you do that, that would be really helpful. But I think we've done most of that. If you've got any feedback, Greg at theimperialtruth.com.
And Neil at theimperialtruth.com.
And if you've got any questions as well, we're still going to do question episodes every now and then. Maybe we need to have a look at like semi-regular painting episodes. Neil, what do you think?
Oh, I love a painting episode, yeah.
We know that. Maybe more kind of targeted. So I know the Age of Sigmar, the Age of Darkness guys are doing their kind of how to paint the Legion systems and going through lots of stuff like that. And it just made me think that maybe we've been a little bit not as organised doing that, shall we say. And they've got Miles, and Miles is great. And we've got you, and there's two different styles maybe.
Yes,
so maybe we can offer up, some stuff there. So cover more bases, and so of course some people don't listen to Age of Darkness and some people don't listen to us, so yeah, those people aren't missing out on stuff they're not listening to anyway. But yeah, we could do a little bit of that. So send in your questions, send in your thoughts. There's we've had some feedback on the Black Library segments with Michael, and everyone who's commented to me has said they really enjoy it. So we're going to carry on with them because I think they're a bit different. I think they're quite good. I think again we let that slide a little bit. I'm also looking at talking to someone else, getting them in to do some other little bits and pieces as well. Really spreading it to a cast of people that we then have helping the podcast, which I think is a cool thing. Brings on different perspectives. All very positive people who hopefully know what they're talking about in their field.
And not everyone wants to hear our voices all the time.
Well, no, everyone's got to hear mine because I've got to record it. So tough is the answer on that one. But yeah, we're building stuff up. We're trying stuff, and yeah, please give us some feedback because sometimes it doesn't come in that way. Sometimes we get more face to face. You tend to get people saying stuff, but it's always helpful to do it. I haven't said this for a while, but if you're on iTunes, then leave us a review. And if you do listen to the show, but you don't subscribe, and you listen via Podcatcher on iTunes or something like that, then subscribing's really cool as well, because that really does help us almost more than the reviews. iTunes is weird, but works really well. So, so we carry on using that. And, yeah, cool. I think we're done for that episode.
Yes.
So, yep, don't forget to put your money in, and we'll come back and we'll be feeding all the information back about the Weekender. Neil, you must have lots of painting to do.
Oh, yeah, I've got another 2 hours tonight.
Excellent. We'll leave you to it. And you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.